Sultan Abdul Samad Building is a historic building located in the heart of Kuala Lumpur. Located nearby the river confluence which gives Kuala Lumpur its name, Sultan Abdul Samad Building is one of the most recognizable landmarks in the city. Completed in the year 1897, the building was the centre of the government during British colonial era and became the centre of judiciary in the late 20th century. When Malaya achieved its independence in the year 1957, the first Malayan flag was hoisted in front of Sultan Abdul Samad Building, marking its role in Malaysian independence history. What are the stories that are witnessed by the walls of Sultan Abdul Samad Building? And did you know that the current name Sultan Abdul Samad Building was not its original name? Let's walk by the colonial era bricks and understand more of the important historical events happened within and around Sultan Abdul Samad Building. For more than a century, general public were not allowed into Sultan Abdul Samad Building due to its function as a government offices and later federal court complex. In my previous video published in the year 2025 when I follow Heritage Trail, a self-guide path promoted by Rapid KL, the city's public transport operator, the building is surrounded by scaffolding and under major restoration works. A year later, in the year 2026, the building is in its pristine form, just as look as new when the building was opened in the year 1897. The big difference this time is that the public not only allowed to enter the building but encouraged to visit one of the most recognizable landmarks in Kuala Lumpur. Let's enter Sultan Abdul Samad Building and start the history and the story of why this building was built in the first place. The story of Sultan Abdul Samad Building was started in the late 19th century. Before we going deeper into the story of Sultan Abdul Samad Building, let's take a brief look into the early days of Kuala Lumpur. Before Kuala Lumpur was chosen as the capital of Federated Malay States, the British ruled each Malay state as its own colonies, while the capital of Selangor was Jugara, where the Sultan was resided. Federated Malay States was formed in the year 1896 to combine four Malay states under a single federation. There were two towns that became the candidates to become the capital of the Federated Malay States, Taiping and Kuala Lumpur, but the story of this candidature rivalry is a different story. And make long story short, Kuala Lumpur was chosen as the capital of the Federated Malay States and the capital of state of Selangor. Yes, Kuala Lumpur was the capital of Selangor until 1974. Before the construction of Sultan Abdul Samad Building, government offices were scattered around Bluff Road, which is today Jalan Bukit Aman. And even until today, there are several government offices located in Bukit Aman, primarily Royal Malaysian Police or BDRM. In modern Malaysia, Bukit Aman is synonymous with police headquarters. Due to its hilly terrain and growing bureaucracy structure, Bukit Aman is no longer suitable to be the administrative centre. Imagine that someone need to climb the hill to the office every working day, every morning. There was no escalator or lift at that time, only stairs. As the tin mining activities thrive in Selangor, the state revenue increased from 300,000 straight settlement dollars in 1882 to 1 million straight settlement dollars in the year 1897. With the growing revenue and larger bureaucracy, there was a need to build new government offices. The site west of Klang River was chosen across the dense commercial areas on the east bank of the river, where the central market is located. The reason is that the government offices and British bungalows were located at the hilly west side of Klang River, while densely packed Chinese settlement and shop houses and Malay villages are located at the flat eastern side. Divide and rule. The site chosen was located east of Padang, which is Merdeka Square today. Walking in Heritage Room, a small exhibition room on the ground floor, is dedicated for both exhibition, the oldest tea brand in Malaysia and remain one of the most popular tea brands in the country. Both was founded by John Archibald Russell, his father James Russell was the first government printer in Selangor, one of the departments that occupied Bukit Aman in the early Kuala Lumpur. I talked about the tea plantation in Cameron Highlands in the previous video, where the production of local tea makes tea remain an affordable drink for the masses. Teh tarik, tea with sweetened tin milk, is a must-have during the late night conversation, talking until that night. To know more about the Cameron Highlands and the tea plantation and the road trip I made in the previous video, the link to watch the video is up here. As the site of the building was selected, it was the time to choose an architectural style fit for a global colonial power. Under the direction of State Engineer of Selangor Public Works Department, Charles Edwin Spooner, a new government building located at the east of Padang was designed by A.C. Norman or Arthur Charles Alfred Norman. The original name of this building was Government Offices. Initially, A.C. Norman proposed a classical design similar to Singapore's Old Town Hall, which is today Victoria Theatre, but it was rejected due to excessive costs. In 1897, when the building was completed, Mr. Spooner gave a speech during a dinner which included this passage. Mr. Norman then drew out a ground plan and Mr. Bidwell an elevation in classic Renaissance of a building. Though I did not like the design, I adopted the arrangement of the offices and the general lines. I then decided on the Mohammedan style and in due course sent it with an estimate for $152,000. Norman's assistants R.A.J. Bidwell and young Arthur Benison Habak redesigned the building into Indo-Saracenic style, the style that combines the Indian, Islamic and classical architecture, the style that shaped and set the modern architecture in Malaysia for decades to come. Why does Charles Edwin Spooner choose Indo-Saracenic architecture over classical Renaissance architecture? Spooner did not give a direct answer, but the primary reason is the cost. It is cheaper to build an Indo-Saracenic building which costs $152,000 straight settlement dollars compared to a Renaissance style building that estimated to cost $192,000 straight settlement dollars. Furthermore, the bricks were made locally at brick fields which are located next to the Kuala Lumpur Klang Railway, easing the transport of bricks to the site. Due to brickworks in the late 19th and early 20th century, that is how brickfields got its name. Ooh. J.M. Gullick, a historian, in his article The Sultan Abdul Samad Building wrote, however, its aesthetic qualities appealed to Spooner and its obvious Islamic style made it more suitable for the principal offices of a Malay state government than the English town hall marked Greek temple originally proposed to Spooner. The building was officiated in the year 1897 and housed most of the government offices both for Federated Malay States and State of Selangor. Despite their important roles in designing the government offices, the names R.A.J. Bidwell and Arthur Benison Habak was not seen on the foundation stone block. Fret not, Habak will make his name by designing the later landmarks in the city, including Kuala Lumpur Railway Station, the famous beautiful station. To know more about the station, the link is above. You can watch more about it. For most of its function as a government building, its official name is Government Offices. Its tall clock tower and domes make this building the earliest of Kuala Lumpur's city landmark, before the tall skyscrapers dominates the cityscape of Kuala Lumpur. Let's enter the miniature Kuala Lumpur in KL City Gallery in the first floor above.
A legacy that brings people together.
The room next to the miniature Kuala Lumpur housed the model of skyscrapers of Kuala Lumpur. It was the former office of Menteri Besar of Selangor. Within a single complex, federal offices and Selangor state offices were housed in a single building. Next door to the north is the former High Court. We will talk more about the courts after this. The function of Sultan Abdul Samad Building as government offices remained even after Japanese occupation during World War II between 1942 until 1945 and after Malaya achieved its independence in the year 1957. The building witnessed the moment when Malaya achieved its independence from Britain, when the tower was decorated with Merdeka or Independence in neon signs form and chimed 12 times on the midnight of 31st of August 1957. At that moment, the last Union Jack was lowered and first Malayan flag was raised, symbolizing the start of an independent Malaya and later independent Malaysia. Due to this strong symbolic act, Merdeka Day or Independence Day was often celebrated in Merdeka Square with stages and crowds gathered around Sultan Abdul Samad Building before Putrajaya was built. In 1957 map, the building was simply called as Government Offices, while 1965 tourist map marked the building as Federal Secretariat. Selangor State Government Offices remained in the building until the year 1974, when Kuala Lumpur becomes Federal Territory direct under federal rule. As a result, the capital of Selangor moved from Kuala Lumpur to Shah Alam, a planned city 20 kilometers west of Kuala Lumpur. The current name Sultan Abdul Samad Building was bestowed in the year 1974 in the memory of Sultan Sir Abdul Samad, the 4th Sultan of Selangor, who reigned Selangor when the building was officiated back in the year 1897. As more ministries and departments were added to cope with increasing government functions and increasing population, government offices slowly moved out from Sultan Abdul Samad Building to newer buildings in Jalan Duta, Pusat Bandar Damansara and eventually to Putrajaya. And how many of you knew that the domes of Sultan Abdul Samad Building were not originally copper as you see today? It's not the original colour. Between 1897 until 1982, the domes of Sultan Abdul Samad Building were black, as the domes were made of plumbum, which is lead, similar with the domes of the former High Court, black. The copper domes are the gift from Australia installed in 1982. The copper domes that gives Sultan Abdul Samad Building its iconic shiny looks. After the restoration work finished between 1984 until 2003, the Supreme Court, which is the current Federal Court, moved out from Old Court Building next door to Sultan Abdul Samad Building. The adjacent buildings such as Old General Post Office were converted into judicial use. During its tenure as a Federal Court, Sultan Abdul Samad Building witnessed high-profile cases including the appeal case of Mon Effendi. Pretty chilly, is it? Federal Court moved to Putrajaya in the year 2003, while Kuala Lumpur High Court was moved to the new building near Jalan Duta, which is today Jalan Tuanku Abdul Halim, in the year 2007. Even after the seat of government moved to Putrajaya, Sultan Abdul Samad Building becomes the focal point of demonstration of all causes and colours. Yeah, these two. Between 2007 until 2024, the building was occupied by Ministry of Tourism, Arts and Culture before the ministry fully moved to Putrajaya. And afterwards, the building was underwent a major restoration to become a culture centre with galleries and cafes. In the year 2025, Sultan Abdul Samad Building is under major refurbishment as part of Warisan KL project to rejuvenate the old city centre as the new civic district for Kuala Lumpur. In the budget 2023, 600 million ringgit was spent to repair, refurbish and restore the selected heritage buildings in historic Kuala Lumpur, but the fund is not directly comes from the taxpayers' money. Funded by Khazanah, the National Sovereign Wealth Fund, the cost of repairing and restoring the old buildings in the civic district around Merdeka Square and Perdana Botanical Garden is around 600 million. Here is where the confusion and fake news regarding the 600 million ringgit restoration cost comes from, which is Seri Negara, the former state guest house, was open to the public since 20th of December 2025. This is the first building that opened to the public using the 600 million heritage fund. Then people assume that Seri Negara alone, the house is quite small, cost 600 million to repair. 600 million is not just for Seri Negara, it is for Karkosa, Sultan Abdul Samad Building, Old General Post Office Building, former High Court Building, former City Hall Building, former Survey Office Building and National Textile Museum. Restoration of the old buildings is not cheap due to the materials used must be original materials, expertise in both architecture and history, and correct construction technique. You cannot simply buy something online and then just put there and the things broke down within a year. Another question is 600 million ringgit spent on colonial buildings justified? Because after all, it was the British who built these buildings. Did you know how the British funded this building, the opulent buildings, when they built it back in the year 1896? Of course, from the revenue of the richness of Selangor and the richness of Malaya. Furthermore, look how long-lasting the old craftsmanship is, magnificent even after more than a century. I frequently visited Singapore and its civic district buildings are well taken care of. Functioning and aesthetic old buildings means tourists from all over the world, which means money spent on flights, hotels, food, souvenirs and transport. It will be a shame if we let these historic buildings let to rot. Think of all the important events that led to the independence of Malaya and formation of Malaysia, all witnessed by these walls. One last pedantry info, not so important but you can know at least. The spot where the monument of the 50th anniversary of Kuala Lumpur is the spot where statue of Frank Swettenham, the first Resident General of the Federated Malay States, once stood. The statue is now kept in the National Museum. Overall, walking around and in the Sultan Abdul Samad Building is a pleasant experience. It makes me as a local to appreciate the richness of story and wealth this building and this country. Have you visited Sultan Abdul Samad Building when you visited Kuala Lumpur? You may comment down below. If you want to visit Sultan Abdul Samad Building, the building is located between Merdeka Square and Klang River in the heart of Kuala Lumpur. Its clock tower, greenish walls and copper domes are hard to miss. The nearest station is Masjid Jamek, the interchange between LRT Ampang Sri Petaling lines and Kelana Jaya line. From Masjid Jamek station, it is 5 minutes walk to Sultan Abdul Samad Building via pedestrian bridge. The entrance to the building compound is free for all visitors. To enter the KL City Gallery in the first level, Malaysians can enter for free as on May 2025, while non-Malaysians need to pay 40 ringgit per person, 20 ringgit for children below 12 years old. If you come at the right time, there might be a public event, concert or exhibition that you may attend. Reference list in the form of article is in the description for your further reference. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you learned something new about Sultan Abdul Samad Building and its importance from the center of power to the center of culture. Thank you so much for watching again and see you in the next video.